This episode of The Best Parts is all about one of the world's most prolific, influential, and creative storytellers, the American master of horror, Stephen King. But it's not all out-of-control telekinesis and terrifying monsters. King has written some of the most endearing fiction and important nonfiction of the 20th and 21st centuries. So keep your eye on the Dark Tower and stay away from the sewers, because this is Stephen King, The Best Parts. First, some numbers. Between 54 novels, over 200 short stories, and even a little nonfiction here and there, Stephen King's books have sold over 350 million copies worldwide. He's received more awards and accolades than we can count, so let's just say that they don't hand out the National Medal of Arts to just anybody. But more than his financial or critical success, King has shaped American pop culture perhaps more than any other horror writer of the 20th century. I mean, Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining, The Stand, The Dead Zone, Firestarter, Cujo, The Running Man, Christine, Pet Sematary, Misery, The Tommyknockers, Needful Things, Dolores Claiborne, Under the Dome, Graveyard Shift, The Lawnmower Man, Children of the Corn, The Jaunt, Apt Pupil, The Langoliers, Hearts in Atlantis, It, The Dark Tower. I bet you've been scared by at least one of those stories, and they're all from the brain of Stephen King. Some of those stories have become truly, literally, actually iconic. Carrie, his first novel, is still a cultural touchstone for weirdo teens everywhere. The Shining isn't only a terrifying novel about the dangers of alcoholism, it was also adapted into one of Stanley Kubrick's most important films.
Come play with us, Daddy.
By the way, Stephen King was not a fan of the film. He thought Jack Nicholson was a little too Jack Nicholson.
Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration.
I see his point. Does the name Cujo enter your head whenever you cross paths with an aggressive dog? Thanks, Stephen King. Do you find super blonde children more creepy than cute? That's Stephen King. If you know the original Stan is Annie Wilkes, that some deals are too good to be true, and if you've been tracing Randall Flagg's movements across dimensions, then you, like millions of horror fans, have been influenced by Stephen King. That's a pretty big impact for somebody who is working as a teacher and writing short stories for pulp magazines in his spare time. King's career may never have happened if his wife hadn't taken a closer look at his wastebasket. He'd thrown away an early draft of Carrie, but his wife Tabitha was impressed.
She read it after she fished it out and brushed off the cigarette butts.
And encouraged him to finish the work. And really, he hasn't stopped working since. So you've probably got the impression by now that King is a fairly accomplished writer. In fact, he's even written extensively on the subject of writing itself. In 2000, his book On Writing was popular with aspiring authors across all kinds of fiction. It's not just a how-to guide. The book delivers solid writing advice for beginners and professionals who could use a refresher. King also talks about how his personal experiences have helped or hindered his work. He overcame a long period of drug and alcohol abuse, and the book also documents his return to writing after he was nearly killed by a reckless driver. So if he can get back to work after such monumental setbacks, surely we would-be authors of the world can find time at the end of the day to get some writing done. Time and time again, Stephen King is super encouraging to anyone who wants to write.
To develop as a writer, you must be reading books constantly. Here are a few suggestions. The Shining, Carrie, Salem's Lot, Pet Sematary, Dolores Claiborne, The Green Mile, Under the Dome. You get the idea.
In a 1988 essay, Everything You Need to Know About Writing Successfully in 10 Minutes, he gives his description of a talented writer. If you wrote something for which someone sent you a check, if you cashed the check and it didn't bounce, and if you then paid the light bill with the money, I consider you talented. That's not just good advice for horror writers.
Scary stuff, scary stuff, scary stuff. Ding! Scary stuff, scary stuff, scary stuff. Lunch!
It's good advice for all writers. And King himself isn't boxed in by the horror genre. There are a few movies based on Stephen King works that may surprise you, like Stand By Me, The Shawshank Redemption, and The Green Mile. All three of those are incredible films. But it's not just major studios he works with. Have you ever heard of a dollar baby? Okay, this is the coolest. Film students in small theaters are allowed to adapt one of King's short stories for the low price of $1. That's pretty generous. And King's generosity extends to philanthropy too. In fact, the Stephen and Tabitha King Foundation has supported communities all over Maine since 1986. It's given millions to libraries, fire departments, mental health and medical charities, nature conservation projects. He really knows how to share his wealth. And now there's a wealth of new King adaptations hitting the theaters. I'm beyond ready for the new version of It, even though I know I will have Pennywise nightmares for months. And I'm still reeling from The Dark Tower, interdimensional tale of redemption and attempts at, saving reality. Part sci-fi, part western, part horror, and all Idris Elba. What are your favorite Stephen King stories? Did we leave out the scariest ones? Tell us about all your nightmares in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so we can keep bringing you videos about all our favorite stuff and the best parts.